Curt Hennig, famously known as Mr. Perfect, was one of the most talented wrestlers in the history of professional wrestling. Born on March 28, 1958, in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, Hennig was immersed in the wrestling world from a young age, being the son of Larry the Axe Hennig, a prominent wrestler himself. Growing up in a family deeply rooted in wrestling, Curt showed an early interest in athletics, excelling in various sports during his high school years at Robbinsdale High School. After graduating, he pursued a career in wrestling, training under the tutelage of his father and other wrestling legends. He made his debut in 1980 and quickly gained recognition for his incredible in-ring abilities, charisma, and unique persona. His moniker, Mr. Perfect, symbolized not only his wrestling prowess, he was portrayed with excellence, showcasing skills that seemed flawless to the audience. However, the irony of being called perfect lies in the struggles and imperfection that Curt faced throughout his life. Despite his success in the wrestling industry, which included stints in the WWF and WCW, he battled personal demons, particularly substance abuse. His struggles with addiction became public knowledge, highlighting the stark contrast between his on-screen persona and real-life challenges. The metaphorical weight of being labeled perfect only intensified as he struggled with these issues, showcasing the inherent imperfections of human life. His wrestling career was marked by memorable feuds and alliances, including partnerships with notable wrestlers like Rick Rude and the West Texas Rednecks. His ability to connect with the audience through his charismatic performance solidified his status as a wrestling icon. Despite the challenges he faced, he remained beloved by fans and respected by his peers. As his life embodied the metaphorical significance of being called perfect, he showcased extraordinary talent and charisma in the wrestling ring, and his legacy continues to resonate in the wrestling community. This is the story of Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig.
You know he's flawless, without a doubt. In a square circle, he'll knock you out. Oh, he's Mr. Perfect. Hear the crowd shout. Oh, he's Mr. Perfect.
Minnesota, where the north wind blows, where the harmony of love forever grows. Join the band in this northern show in Minnesota, where our heart...
Curtis Michael Hennig was born on March 28, 1958, in Minnesota. He grew up deeply entrenched in the world of professional wrestling, as his father, Larry the Axe Hennig, was a prominent wrestler. This connection to wrestling played a crucial role in shaping Curt's aspirations and interests. Larry Hennig's influence was profound. He not only served as a father figure, but a mentor who instilled the values of hard work, discipline, and dedication. From a young age, Curt was exposed to the wrestling lifestyle, attending events with his father and on a first-name basis with many wrestling legends. This early exposure to the business nurtured his passion for the sport and set the stage for his future career. Curt's upbringing in Minnesota was characterized by active involvement in sports. He attended high school at Robbinsdale High School, where he excelled in athletics, particularly in wrestling and football. His athletic abilities were evident early on, and he quickly gained recognition for his achievements. He was known for being competitive and his natural talent, attributes that would serve him well in both high school and later in professional wrestling. In high school, he was a standout wrestler, earning a state championship and showcasing his technical skills on the mat. His dedication to training and competition helped him develop a strong work ethic that would carry over into his wrestling career. His commitment to excellence and desire to succeed were traits that became synonyms with the Mr. Perfect persona he would later adopt. After completing high school, he briefly attended the University of Minnesota, where he continued to compete in amateur wrestling. However, his passion for professional wrestling ultimately led him to make a pivotal decision to pursue a career in the wrestling industry rather than continuing his college education. This choice reflected his desire to follow his father's footsteps and pursue a path that had long fascinated him. While at the University of Minnesota, Curt's competitive nature shined through. He garnered respect from his peers and coaches. His time in college provided him with further insights into the world of athletics and allowed him to refine his skills. Nevertheless, his heart was set on professional wrestling. During his training, he had the privilege of learning from some of the best in the industry. Notably, he trained alongside fellow wrestlers like Jesse the Body Ventura, Don Morocco, Vern Gagne, and his father Larry Hennig, allowing him to refine his skills while building a lasting relationship with other wrestlers. These training sessions not only provided technical instruction, but also emphasized the importance of wrestling psychology, storytelling, and character development, preparing him for the many challenges of professional wrestling.
Oh, he's Mr. Perfect. Hear the crowd shout. Oh, he's Mr. Perfect. That's what he's about.
In 1979, him and his wife would give birth to their first son, Joe. His wife explained that he just made it to the hospital before she went into labor. His son would comment later on in life that he never missed an event or a game.
And every move, every word is true. Crafting a legacy others pursue.
Known at the time as Cool Curt Hennig, his first match listed on cagematch.net against Billy Howard on February 2nd, 1981 at an AWA event in Omaha, Nebraska. He would spend the early part of 1981 bouncing around the AWA doing mostly house shows. But to the suggestion of his father, he went to New York to attempt to make his way into the WWF. He would make his debut in the summer of 1981 and spend the rest of the year working for the McMahons in New York. After spending months losing every match, Curt became frustrated about his position on the card. He decided to head west in search for greener pastures and ended up in Don Owens' Portland Wrestling, where again he would be alongside his father and capture the promotion's tag team title. But by 1984, he would be back in the AWA. In 1986, Curt Hennig, according to The Observer, was appointed as Scott Hall's caretaker. On February 3rd of 1986, him and Scott Hall would win the tag team title, but would later lose it to Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in May of that year. Behind the scenes, rumors were spreading that both men were heading to the WWF. Although on May 25th, Curt would be awarded the AWA title and hold it until December 7th, but lose it to Greg Gagne under mysterious circumstances.
It's a perfect flex. He conquers through. Curt Hennig spirit in every venue.
The rivalry between Curt Hennig and Nick Bockwinkel reached a significant climax in 1986 during a legendary 60-minute time limit match for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. This was the famous 60-minute draw that ESPN aired on New Year's Eve. Doing a 60-minute draw on New Year's Eve sounds like a recipe for suicide ratings, but once they started the match, people were hooked until the end. Curt really showed here just how good he was going to get. Leading up to the match, he had already established himself as a formidable competitor, gaining momentum through a series of victories and building anticipation among fans. The match itself was a masterclass in wrestling, featuring intense psychology and dramatic near falls that kept the audience on the edge of their seats. By 1987, it was rumored in the Wrestling Observer Curt was the one holding the AWA together and their biggest star. But by that time, the AWA was struggling to compete with larger promotions like the WWF and Jim Crockett Promotions. Curt, however, emerged as one of the promotion's top stars and main attractions, especially after he won the AWA World Heavyweight Championship from Nick Bockwinkel in May of 1987. His reign brought some much-needed energy and credibility to the AWA. Bockwinkel was instrumental in passing him the torch, realizing that he could be the next star to lead the AWA. As a champion, he took the role of a heel, which allowed him to showcase his charisma and in-ring skills, helping him to keep the AWA's product relevant. His championship defense against top wrestlers like Greg Gagne and Jerry Lawler helped him become the face of the AWA during this period. But behind the scenes, he's beginning to fall apart. Checks were routinely late, and payouts were a fraction of what he could be making somewhere else. He was becoming a bigger star, but had to think about his family, which now included 4 kids. On August 1st of 1988, The Observer would report that Curt was in negotiations with the WWF.
the squared circle. He'll knock you out.
Curt held the AWA World Heavyweight Championship until May 1998, when he lost it to Jerry Lawler. He finally decided to sign with the World Wrestling Federation. His departure from the AWA was a significant event for both Curt and the AWA itself. His exit came in a critical time, as many top talents had left the AWA, causing the promotion to lose a key star and champion. His decision to leave was influenced by WWF's offer, which promised greater exposure, higher payouts, merchandising, and more career opportunities. After leaving the AWA and signing with the WWF, he realized what a major turning point it had made in his career. The WWF quickly repackaged him as Mr. Perfect, a character known for his cocky, flawless persona, athletic, and perfection in all endeavors. This persona would become one of the most iconic in wrestling history and established Curt as a major WWF star. His vignettes leading up to his debut showcased him excelling in various sports from football and basketball to golf and bowling, emphasizing the perfect theme. These vignettes were designed to showcase his athleticism and charisma, creating immediate interest in his character. Curt debuted on WWF television as Mr. Perfect in the fall of 1988. His initial matches helped establish his undefeated streak, creating a strong foundation for his character and setting him up as a serious contender in the World Wrestling Federation. He quickly became known for his exceptional in-ring skills, charisma, and ability to cut a compelling promo. He was often involved in high-profile storylines and feuds, particularly with top stars like Bret Hart and Randy Savage. Curt Hennig's Mr. Perfect vignettes are some of the most iconic in wrestling history. Created by the WWF in the late 1980s to introduce his Mr. Perfect persona, these segments featured Curt performing various athletic feats flawlessly, from bowling a perfect game to hitting a hole-in-one in golf. Each vignette emphasized his character's supposed perfection in any activity he attempted, portraying him as an unbeatable and supremely confident athlete who could outshine anyone. These vignettes were effective in building his persona as someone who is genuinely perfect, setting him up as both a villain and a technical powerhouse in the ring. Like a magician, people would always wonder how he got the hole-in-ones and the basketball in the hoop with his back turned, but there was no trick photography and post-production editing. The fact of the matter is Curt possessed a skill set to make most of those on his first or second try. Upon his debut as Mr. Perfect, WWF built him up with an undefeated streak that extended well into 1989. This streak was an essential part of building his heel persona and establishing him as a credible, unbeatable athlete in the eyes of fans. WWF protected his character, allowing him to gain momentum and respect as a performer. The streak set the stage for future rivalries and positioned him as one of the WWF's main stars in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The undefeated angle added legitimacy to Curt's character as he showcased both his technical skill and in-ring intelligence in every match.
Oh, Mr. Perfect with a gleam in his eye, dragging laughs around as he passes by.
Known for his sharp wit and love for pranks, he had a knack for stirring up chaos in the locker room. Among his legendary stunts was greasing the soles of fellow wrestlers' boots before matches, causing them to slip in the ring to the amusement of everyone but the victim. Another infamous prank involved gluing Razor Ramon's boots to the locker room floor, leaving him scrambling before a match. He even once replaced the contents of Owen Hart's protein shake with a less savory concoction, leading to a hilarious post-workout realization. He even orchestrated a fake call to Bret Hart, pretending to be a promoter offering a bogus endorsement deal. His pranks, while often harmless, occasionally crossed the line.
Oh, he's Mr. Perfect. Hear the crowd shout.
He played a sneaky role in the infamous feud between the Dynamite Kid and Jacques Rougeau. Jacques Rougeau would state, Mr. Fuji and the British Bulldogs were the king of ribbers, and they created a lot of animosity. There was already heat between the Bulldogs and us. We were in Madison Square Garden, and we had a 20-minute Broadway with them, and they were the champions. They were upset because they didn't beat us. Then after that, I became a victim of them when they started playing ribs on me. We were in Syracuse, and I wanted to get a flight home to Montreal to see my kids. We were on 6th, the Bulldogs were on 3rd, so I went to Strongbow and asked him to switch our matches. Mr. Perfect was trying to cause trouble. He came to see me in the dressing room and said, "Jacques, if I were you, I'd be careful with my stuff. You're on the list of the Bulldogs." I said, "Okay, do you mind checking my bags when I'm in the ring?" When I got to the dressing room after my match, Mr. Perfect looked at me right in my eye, then he looked at my bag, then he looked me in the eye, looked at my bag, looked me in the eye, looked at my bag, and then he looked down. So I thought the Bulldogs came in and played with my stuff. I looked through my bag really fast, but none of my clothes were cut up. But I felt something was wrong. So just before I left, I told Perfect, "I'm not going to stand for this. I'm going to talk to Vince when I get back." Now I was being accused of being a stooge. Curt would add fuel to the fire when he would tell the Dynamite Kid that Jacques ratted him out to the office, leading to the infamous retaliation where Rougeau struck back with a roll of quarters. Curt's mischief set off a chain reaction, escalating tensions and cementing the incident as one of wrestling's most notorious backstage dramas. Since Curt arrived in the WWF, it was his dream to have Bobby the Brain Heenan as his manager. So when he was paired up with jobber turned heel Lanny Poffo, neither men were excited over the pairing. Although in later years, the genius would admit the 4 months he spent alongside Mr. Perfect were the best 4 months of his 20-year career to that point, it wouldn't come without some growing pains along the way. Before going on live, Regis wanted Curt to join him in a bowling demonstration, but Curt wasn't interested in showing off his bowling skills on live TV. Curt declined, explaining that Mr. Perfect didn't need to prove himself on live television. His refusal was both in character and a clever way to maintain the mystique of his flawless image. The move left Regis and Kathy Lee amused, as Curt's confidence and charisma sold the moment just as effectively as if he bowled a perfect strike.
Are you watching, Mr. Perfect?
I'm watching. Go
All
ahead.
right, babe, here you go.
Good, Regis.
No!
Not bad. It's a spare.
Darn!
You got a spare.
But I got close. I got 4 down, didn't I?
Lanny Poffo provided insight into the tense bowling incident. According to Poffo, Curt refused to bowl because he was concerned about maintaining his Mr. Perfect persona, especially ahead of a significant match against Hulk Hogan later on that night. Regis, frustrated by his refusal, expressed his irritation during the show. Hennig instead offered to perform a magic trick, but it led to further awkwardness when Regis misremembered the card during the act. Poffo, feeling caught in the middle, explained that Curt was upset afterward, believing Poffo might have upstaged him during the exchange. Despite the tension, Poffo emphasized that Hennig was a consummate professional and deeply respected among his peers, recalling this as a rare, uncomfortable moment in an otherwise excellent partnership.
Mr. Perfect rides in, the wind at his back, Texas tornado dust on the track. Boots hit the floor of that old saloon, filling the air with a cowboy tune.
He captured the WWF Intercontinental Championship by defeating the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. This win marked a significant achievement in his WWF career and established him as a top-tier champion within the promotion. On August 6th of 1990, Curt, Haku, and Brady Boone were involved in a bar brawl in St. Louis, which led to the arrest of Haku and Brady Boone. Curt was reportedly involved too, and apparently took a stool to the head. The brawl occurred after a customer tried to talk to a woman who was with one of the wrestlers, prompting Haku to allegedly grab the man by the throat and toss him across the room. Haku then started choking the man, and it took 4 bouncers and 6 police officers to pull him off. One of the police officers had a chunk of his back bitten out in the melee. Haku was charged with battery, resisting arrest, and destruction of property, while Brady Boone was arrested for battery. When Curt replaced Bobby Heenan as Flair's executive consultant, the Brain was a huge influence on him, and Curt even wore a suit with Mr. Perfect embroidered on the back, just like Bobby Heenan. Vince McMahon called it his Bobby Heenan starter kit. Bobby Heenan would say, "Curt Hennig is a tremendous athlete. His father, Larry, wrestled as the Axe. I called Irene, his wife, the Battle Axe. I've known Curt since he was a kid. Curt was like a Barry Windham or a Ray Stevens. He has the ability to bounce back into the ring. If he does something wrong, he can easily recover." When McMahon was hyping IcoPro as a bodybuilding supplement in the WWF, Curt gave his kid some before a football game. The kid ended up not playing because he had the shits for 4 days and couldn't practice. In the early 1990s, he had issues with absences while he was dealing with injuries, which led to some complications regarding his insurance with Lloyd's of London. He was involved in a significant injury claim that resulted in the insurance company tightening up their policies, as they suspected some wrestlers were not genuinely incapacitated. This was partly due to Curt's situation, where he remained involved in wrestling-related activities, such as being a commentator or executive assistant, even when he wasn't competing in matches. When an adjuster from Lloyd's of London called the H&R department of the World Wrestling Federation to gather more information about a policy, a lack of communication caused Curt's policy to possibly being looked at a little closer and eventually cancelled. The conversation hit an awkward silence when the representative from the WWF spilled the beans about a planned run-in during the next pay-per-view, which was No Way Out. Throughout the following week, Curt no-showed several WWF live events. At one time, he did speak with Vince McMahon over the phone, and it was reported he would be signing a lucrative contract with the company as a wrestler. When Curt no-showed WWF's pay-per-view No Way Out, the office realized it was something more than just a cold. In the April 7th, 1997 edition of The Observer, Dave Meltzer would write, "Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard had a meeting with Curt Hennig and his father Larry last week at WWF headquarters in Stamford. Reportedly, Vince and Pritchard were an hour late, and the Hennigs were just about to walk out and leave when they arrived. During the meeting, they discussed the possibility of Curt returning, but it reportedly didn't go well, as Hennig was still upset about the WWF costing him his Lloyd's of London insurance policy, which would have paid Hennig a $300,000 lump sum payment. If you recall, WWF wanted Hennig to return to the ring a few months ago, and in the midst of negotiations, WWF sent a letter to Lloyd's of London over the insurance issues. That resulted in Lloyd's cancelling Hennig's policy. Bruce Pritchard reportedly sent the letter that caused the problem, and in the meeting, he claimed to know nothing about it. In turn, Hennig pulled out a copy of the letter, signed by Pritchard, and showed it to him. Anyway, the meeting didn't go well, and WCW is confident that he'll be coming to their side when his WWF contract expires. Last week, they had Larry Hennig on the show to cut a promo, specifically to show WWF that Curt isn't with them. As for Curt, word is he's much bigger and bulkier than he has been in recent years. Draw your own conclusions from that. He would also write, "There must have been major heat between Curt and Vince for not only Curt to jump, but to burn Vince and the company on 2 consecutive weekends on his way out the door." The story going around is that Curt had no interest in returning to the ring, as he was a very short time away from a lifetime disability settlement from his Lloyd's of London policy, which would have paid him a reported $300,000 lump sum. However, something happened that Hennig blamed Vince for, which led to Lloyd's not paying him the lump sum, which without the lump sum probably would have to lessen Curt's reasons for not wanting to return to the ring. Lloyd's no longer sells insurance policies to pro wrestlers after having to pay out such a high percentage of those that purchased policies in the short time that they were offered. Rick Rude, Ted DiBiase, Road Warrior Animal, Curt Hennig, and Nikita Koloff, among others, all collected on these policies. In the case of all but Animal and Curt, collected a big lump sum for permanent disability and to never return to the ring. When he decided he was going to return due to bitterness with McMahon, he decided to contact Bischoff and WCW. If it actually happened this way, then Bischoff and WCW would be much less in jeopardy of a tampering charge if Curt came to them rather than the other way around. In 1997, Curt was involved in a road rage incident in Iowa that led to his arrest. According to reports at the time, he became involved in a dispute with another driver while on the road. and the situation quickly escalated. The incident reportedly ended with Curt physically confronting the other driver, which led to a charge of assault. Curt eventually debuted in the WCW. He was brought in as a major name from WWF and quickly aligned himself with big factions within the WCW. Initially, he joined the Four Horsemen, but soon betrayed the group to align with Hollywood's NWO. This betrayal was a significant storyline, especially as it took place during the War Games match during the Fall Brawl event in 1997, where he turned on the Horsemen and helped the NWO win. In 1998, he continued to play a prominent role within the NWO. He later became part of NWO Wolfpack, the splinter faction led by Kevin Nash, but eventually shifted back to NWO Hollywood, joining Hogan again in the main faction's battle against the Wolfpack. This period involved a lot of shifting alliances due to the ongoing storyline between NWO Wolfpack and NWO Hollywood. Throughout 1998, he had notable feuds with WCW stars like Diamond Dallas Page and Goldberg. He challenged Goldberg at WCW's Bash at the Beach in July 1998, though Goldberg's popularity was at its peak, and he defeated Curt in the match. Due to lingering knee issues, his appearances became less frequent by late 1998, and he eventually took some time off for rehabilitation. However, his WCW run was still notable for his storytelling impact for adding his charisma to the NWO storyline.
There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. I like NASCAR.
After he returned from his injury, he became involved in a faction known as the West Texas Rednecks, alongside fellow wrestlers Barry Windham, Kendall Windham, Bobby Duncombe Jr., and even Virgil, who is now known as Curly Bill. This group embraced a cowboy persona, and their antics provided a humorous yet competitive edge to the wrestling landscape. They would briefly feud with the No Limit Soldiers, a group represented by Master P, who would only make 2 appearances at $1 million apiece. After that, the group of relatively unknown wrestlers would be left to their own devices, and like the original No Limit records, would fade away. The West Texas Rednecks gained popularity for their catchy theme song, I Hate Rap, which humorously criticized the rise of hip-hop culture in wrestling. The faction's dynamic allowed Curt to showcase his versatility, transitioning from the serious Mr. Perfect character to a more lighthearted persona that resonated with fans. Despite being the supposed villains, the Rednecks were ironically more popular with certain WCW audiences due to their anti-rap stance, highlighting the divide in musical taste among fans.
What really burns my ass are the people that live in that Atlanta area, the people that Rick Rude made a lot of money for, the people that knew Rick Rude that didn't show up to his funeral, and stuff like that. You know what? It's built up it's a frustration that only I can control. I'm telling you right now. Wrestling lost one of his greatest athletes and one of his best money makers, and I lost my best friend.
The death of Rick Rude, some say, would be the beginning of Curt's downfall. The two had been best friends since grade 8. According to Curt, when he returned home from the funeral, he had 2 messages on his answering machine from Rude, asking if he had Eric Bischoff's phone number. He ended the message saying, "I'll see you later," words that would echo in Curt's memory for the rest of his life. In a letter, Curt would write, "I knew Rick Rude for more than 25 years. We met in the 8th grade in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Rick and I were so alike, always scheming. I remember one time I stole a pair of hockey skates from this kid. I told Rick that I got these skates, and if he sells them for me, I would split the money. Rick thought that was one heck of a deal. He took the skates and sold them, back to the kid I stole them from. When he got caught, he never told on me. That's the kind of friend he was. From that moment on, we knew we were best friends. When someone doesn't stooge you off at that early of an age, that's really something." Most close to Curt would agree that he was never the same after Rick Rude's death. But instead of it being a wake-up call, it became a snooze button, delaying the inevitable. The XWF was a promotion that ran from 2001 to 2002, which was founded by Jimmy Hart. Curt would make his debut This time, Bobby the Brain was his agent instead of his manager. In the 2002 Royal Rumble, Curt made his return to the WWF, now calling itself the WWE. Originally, he was brought back with Dustin Rhodes, and was only expected to be a one-off, as Curt was signed to the XWF at the time. After the reaction he received from the Rumble, the company decided to bring Mr. Perfect back after not being seen on WWF TV since 1996. But with the creative process changing since the 90s, the writers just didn't know what to do with him. When he returned, Curt lost most of his matches, and displeased fans would see this as the company jobbing him out. Behind the scenes, Curt was trying to get a handle on his addiction. At this time included a cocktail of pain medications and steroids.
But your dad had to be thrilled, though, when he first found out that you were going back into the WWE.
Oh, yeah. My dad, and he's not so thrilled when I got...
suspended? You're just suspended. That's all we got right now. You're just suspended.
He can't understand how that happened, but...
During the flight back from England's Insurrection pay-per-view, Curt caused quite a scene, spraying people with shaving cream and repeatedly provoking Brock Lesnar into a fight. The two had known each other from their time in Minnesota, before Lesnar joined OVW. As a newcomer, Brock was hesitant to respond, concerned about causing trouble, but was advised that not standing up to Curt could hurt his reputation in the wrestling world. Eventually, he took him down in the aisle more than once until David Finlay intervened, telling him to stop. Curt tried to egg him on further, but Paul Heyman advised Lesnar to ignore him. According to another account, Lesnar first grabbed Hennig and slammed him against a plane door, causing panic among passengers who feared the door might open. Upon returning to the States, Curt would wrestle one more match in the WWF in May of 2002 against Matt Hardy on Sunday Night Heat before he was fired. In December, there was an incident at a bar in Minneapolis involving Brock Lesnar and Curt Hennig. Although details are scarce, it's clear Lesnar wasn't pleased with some comments Hennig made about him. The situation didn't escalate, but Lesnar reportedly fired back verbally, cutting a heated promo on Hennig and storming out of the bar. Later that year, he would begin making appearances in TNA, where he would feud with Jeff Jarrett for the NWA Heavyweight title, as well as form a tag team with BG James. His last match was January 8th of 2003, when he defeated David Flair in an axe handle on a pole match. The WWE Hall of Famer and the Baseball Hall of Famer crossed paths at a banquet dinner in Rochester, New York. Later, they teamed for a memorable Mr. Perfect vignette where Curt hit a home run. They shared a love for hunting and fishing, embarking on trips to places like British Columbia and the Florida Keys. Curt was in Tampa, Florida for a wrestling event and had planned to participate in an autograph signing. He had been out with friends and seemed to be in good spirits. However, those close to him noted that he had been dealing with various health issues in the preceding months, including complications from mixing different substances as well as abusing others. On the morning of February 10th, Curt was discovered unresponsive in his hotel room. Despite attempts to revive him, he was pronounced dead at the scene, 6 weeks before his 45th birthday. Curt's journey from a young boy in Minnesota to one of wrestling's most iconic figures exemplifies the power of passion, resilience, and dedication. His legacy endures, inspiring future generations of wrestlers to pursue their dreams while navigating the complexities in life. His story is a testament to the impact of family, friendship, and the unyielding spirit of a true champion. He married his high school sweetheart, and together they had 4 children. His son Joe followed in his father's footsteps, pursued a career in wrestling under the ring name Curtis Axel, for 15 years in the WWE, even becoming Intercontinental Champion and co-holder of the tag team titles twice.
In the sweat circle, he'll knock you out. Oh, he's Mr. Perfect. Hear the crowd shout.
Oh, he's Mr. Perfect, it's what he's about.